Okay. Good evening, everyone. We'll call tonight's meeting to order for September 7th, 2022. Mr. Metz, will you please call the roll?
Gary Gross.
Here.
Jim Hall. Todd Moore.
Here.
Dane Ward.
Here.
Jerry Heidenreich.
Here.
David Cash.
Here.
And Chris Ambergy. You have quorum.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, next on our agenda is our meeting minutes from July 6th. Do we have any questions or any revisions? No?
Move we accept the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Gary Gross.
Abstain. I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Todd Moore.
Yes.
Dane Ward.
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich.
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, this moves us now to our first case of the evening, number 1022, a request by John Schilder for approval of an area and dimensional variance on the property located at 2223 North Verity Parkway. Property is Zone B2 Commercial Business District, and the variance requested is for the installation of an automotive service device within 160 feet of a residential dwelling where an automotive service device is not permitted within 250 feet from a residential dwelling. Mr. Metz, you want to take the case from here?
Yes. So tonight before you, we have a request by applicant John Schildler for 223 North Verity Parkway for an area and dimensional variance. The property is zone B2. The variance request is for the installation of an automobile service order device within 250 feet. It would approximately be about 160 feet from a residential dwelling. Additionally, a second area and dimensional variance application for the reduction in the required parking down to 10 spaces, where an eating establishment requires 1 space per 100 square feet of floor area, and with the administrative waiver of 10%, it would be down to 15 spaces. As I mentioned, the property is zone B2. Property is right where that arrow points. Residential is to the north of the property. I think it's northwest. We have some residential here, city-owned property here, and then back to residential here. So, accessory uses and structures states audible electronic devices such as loudspeakers, automobile service order devices, and similar instruments shall not be located within 250 feet. Based off their site plan, it's estimated to be roughly 193 feet. This is about standard for this whole entire street. There are several, I think upwards of 10 different fast food restaurants or businesses that do have audible speakers within 250 feet of residents. This is the site plan showing that there would be approximately 10 parking spaces, including 2 spaces for the handicap. Building sits approximately at 1,750 feet. So one space for 100 per 100 square feet of floor area roughly equates to 17 parking spaces. With an administrative waiver, we could bring them down to 15. This is a bit of text that has circulated within staff about changing, because this would not be a restaurant that would have a lot of indoor seating. This is a fast food restaurant primarily used for like Uber Eats and then drive-through as well, not as much floor space. Additionally, the text in our development code is the same whether it's a sit-down restaurant or it's fast food. So that is something that's been in circulation about changing additionally. So you notice it's for all use types. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests, meeting notice letters for the proposed variances were sent to property owners contiguous and directly across the street. No comments were received.
Any questions for Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing?
I'll ask the applicant. Rallies, is this a similar type of situation like Rallies, which is simply a drive-through? As far as you know, if you don't, I'll ask Mr. Scheidler.
As far as I know, there is the indoor possibility of
There is some
applicants
seating, yeah.
coming in, but it's not a significant amount of seating. And the applicant is here, and he can further detail that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the variance, please come forward, and Mr. Cash will swear you in.
Oh, you know what, we did not swear James Metz.
Yes, we'll make a correction
Mr.
at this
Metz?
point. Yep.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you have given and are about to give in this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cash.
Okay. Yes, sir, right there, and if you'll raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Scheidler with Landworks Engineering. We're the engineering consultant for AES Restaurant Group, who's developing this site for the proposed Arby's restaurant. Not too much, I guess, needs to be said for the drive-through intercom speaker. That's just to clarify, I guess, it's just the typical ordering speaker and microphone at a typical fast food restaurant. So that would be present on the site. As you saw on the site plan, there's a dual drive-through lanes. So there would be two of those speakers at the rear of the restaurant, very similar to the KFC next door. Yeah, you can see the two lanes there to the north. And then for the parking variance, the developer and Arby's have actually decided on, and it's the building shown on this site plan, there are no indoor seats for eating, so you can go into the restaurant. There's an ordering counter, there's a restroom, there's no seats. So primarily all the food would be, whether it's drive-through or ordering at the counter, and it'd be all takeout. So that's the reason for the request of the lesser parking that would be needed by this. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions, but that's about all the information I have to add.
So is there a counter where people could order their food and just stand to eat there in store?
There is a,
I mean, is it designed for that? I know people can do
it's
anything, but is it designed for that?
it's not designed for people to eat inside the store. You would enter and there'd be a small counter, as you would typically find at a fast food restaurant. There's just no available room for seating or anything.
Thank you, thank you.
I have a question. Is there a buffer in the back, like trees, bushes? I believe there is there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, due to this site is B2 zoning, and the adjacent parcel to the back is R3. So there's a required buffer yard. The distance varies depending on how much dense of planting, and even I can go down to a 5-foot wide yard if we put a fence up. But we provide more than 5 feet. I believe it's closer to the full 15, and we'll have landscaping and everything up there to meet the code.
Okay, thank you.
You know, how many parking spots do you have actually? 15, what did I hear?
We're proposing 10.
10. And they're on the right-hand side of that sketch?
Yeah, they're all on that right-hand side, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Looking at the setback, and this may be a question Mr. Metz can also answer, but is the 250 feet, is that something that was recent to the code update? I know some of these, or that's more recent. As I looked at the site, many of them, I probably would not meet that setback at this point, so, and if we were to agree to this tonight, this is fairly in line with what's currently there, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank
thank you very much.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. Hearing none, I'll ask now for anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the variance, please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, and we'll move to deliberation. Any comments, questions before we call for a motion? Okay. Okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay. Do we have a motion for approval?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay. Good.
Second.
Okay. That's
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Dan Ward,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
yes.
and Gary Gross.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that brings us now to our next case, 1122. A request by applicant Alicia Brown for approval of a use variance for the property located at 1810 Waynebrook Drive. Property is zoned R4 attached residential. Variance requested is to convert the residential dwelling into a daycare center where daycares are not permitted within the R4 zoning district.
So tonight we have a use variance case number 11 by applicant Alicia Brown for approval of a daycare in an R4 zoning district where daycares are not permitted. Here's a zoning map. A little bit about the R4 attached residential district is that it's to provide for moderate to high density residential development, generally located in the core area of the city that reflects the historic urban development pattern in and around downtown. As you can see, nursery schools or daycare centers, you come up to R4, it's not permitted. It would require a use variance. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests were sent out, and the only citizen comment we had was emailed to you. There's no additional comments. Would you like me to read the use variance criteria?
Yes, if you would, please.
Yep. In order to grant a use variance, the BZA shall determine that strict compliance with the terms of this code will result in unnecessary hardship to the applicant. The applicant must demonstrate such hardship by clear and convincing evidence that all of the following criteria are satisfied. A, the property cannot be put to any economically viable use under any of the permitted uses in the zoning district in which the property is located. B, the variance requested stems from a condition which is unique to the property at issue and not ordinarily found in the same zone or district. C, the variance requested cannot otherwise be resolved by a zoning map amendment, or a zoning map amendment is not the most beneficial approach. D, the essential character of the neighborhood will not be substantially altered as a result of the variance. E, there is an existing structure that cannot be reasonably used for permitted use or a conditionally permitted use in the applicable zoning district. F, the proposed use is listed in table 1204-3. G, the hardship condition is not created by actions of the applicant. H, the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the rights of the adjacent property owners or residents. I, the granting of the variance will not adversely affect the public health, safety, or general welfare. And that concludes my staff report. The applicant is here.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Mr. Metz?
When I see the word historic, I don't know if that's generically being used. Is this a historical society jurisdictional property?
No, it's not.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. We'll swear you in.
Ma'am, would you write, yes, thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi. My name is Alicia Brown. I've been doing a home daycare. I actually lived in that home for like 15 years. I did home daycare when I was there. I mean, in the community, I had people coming from the bus stop, taking the city bus, coming there. And then when I moved to Trenton, and I did home daycare there. But now it's like we have a need in that neighborhood. There's so many kids. We 2 blocks from the school. And when I lived there, me and my neighbor, that's what got me into daycare. Me and my neighbor, we worked different shifts. So she would watch my kids, you know, when I go to work. When I come home, I would watch her kids when they come home from school. So then after I had my daughter, I started doing daycare full time, and I helped the community. And that's what I want to do now. I want to be that person in that community that I can provide this care for the service of these children, that the parents don't have to worry about where they're at, if they're in a safe place, if they, you know, going to get home safe, they don't have to be alone. You know, we'll be there for them.
Under this proposed daycare idea, how many kids would you plan to meet their needs there at the home, just out of curiosity?
Well, based on the square footage of my house, it's saying I can have like 35, but I don't need to have, you know what I'm saying? If per zoning, if you say you can do it, but you not 35 kids, I will be willing to go down. Okay.
Ma'am, daycares, I assume, are governed by state statute. You have to be certified in order to, and the residence has to be certified. What ages of kids do you anticipate that you're going to care for?
Like preschool to school age.
Preschool?
Preschool, school age. Like before and after.
Okay, I didn't understand. I didn't hear school age.
Right.
Okay, so preschool. Have you done this before?
Yeah. Actually, I'm 5-star rated. I do early Head Start
Okay.
out of my home. I have my CDA. I have my associate's degree. And I'm also licensed through the county, the state.
So the state has, I don't know the process of
Okay.
this, okay? So bear with me.
Okay, you're fine.
Is the residence approval, where is that in the steps of the licensure process with the state of Ohio?
The residence approval?
Yeah, I mean, I assume the state of Ohio has to physically approve a particular structure or home or whatever the structures. Somebody from the state, I'm assuming, because we're dealing with kids, and you know, in this day and age, we know that having a bunch of kids in a density situation can be potentially problematic. Okay, so I'm assuming that the state of Ohio, is there a local, what state governmental entity or agency monitors or licenses or certifies
Okay.
daycare homes? Is this Department of Health?
It's Department of Jobs and Family Services.
Job and Family Services,
Right.
okay. And of course, we've got Job and Family Services in every county in this state.
right.
So does someone from Job and Family Services in Hamilton then, as part of your approval process for this house with the state,
Right.
someone come to the residence to view it? Where, and to certify that it has smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, access or exit requirements, and all that good stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so-
Where is that in the process of certifying this house? You say you're already licensed with the state of Ohio
am.
as a certified
Right.
daycare provider?
Right. So what I had to do first, I had to come to zoning and make sure that you guys would approve me to do the house.
Mm-hmm.
Then the state will come in and they will go in and look at the house and
Tell you what needs to be
what
done
needs
with
to be
it.
done.
And is that the first step then? Is that
First step is zoning. then
Okay.
the second
Well, I mean, the
step is-
first step is,
Right.
okay, how many children, based on your experience and the square footage of this home, what's the maximum that the state of Ohio will allow you to take care of in that home?
35.
35?
But you have to have assistance.
Well, of
Won't
course you
be
do.
me
You
by
have,
myself.
okay, how many assistants per number of children is required?
One assistant per, I think it's like 12 children.
1 per 12?
Right. See, when you're in a home, like I'm in a home now, so I have to have one assistant per 6, right? So every 6 kids. So when you come up to a center base, you know, it's larger. So you can have one per, so I would have to have an assistant for each age group.
Is somebody in the house now? Are you in the house now?
My son,
I mean, somebody is living,
yeah, my son.
excuse me, somebody is actually inhabiting.
Living there.
Inhabiting the house.
Yep. My son and his wife and children. But it's too small for them.
Okay.
I was going to ask if have you looked at any other potential locations for your daycare facility? The number of families that you're serving for that particular area, I think it does raise concerns.
Right.
And then, so when we look at, you mentioned that you were 5-star rated and your experience, that's certainly a benefit for, what you're doing here. And we certainly have the need within Middletown for those types of services. But have you looked elsewhere outside of this particular location to maybe
Well, actually,
create a site-based plan?
So I live in Trenton, so I looked in the Trenton area and I couldn't find anything. Even though Trenton needs daycare, I can't find an establishment that will rent me a space. And then I start thinking, well, I have this house over there. They're going to move out. Maybe I can see if I can do it there because I know the need is there. And we're actually 2 blocks from the school. But like I said, if the concern is how many children, we don't have to do 35. We can do less. We can do 25. Or, we can do less children.
I've got a question or two there. Age limits on the children. If you get into infants, don't they require a more dense adult population?
But see, preschool is not infants.
Okay.
They're toddlers. So infants is like 0 to 12. I'm not trying to do infants. I'm trying to do preschool, like from, there'd be like 3 to 5. So I'm getting them ready for kindergarten,
Okay, so they have
before
to
and
be
after.
3 years old to qualify for you to accept.
Right.
Okay, now the other question that comes to mind is the parking. And if you have 6 adults there, I don't know how many, but say 6, where do you park and how do you get the kids dropped off and the traffic?
Right. So right now, this is what we do, because everybody have different shifts. There's no, you hardly ever get 2 or 3 coming at the same time. But I do have a driveway where they can pull up in the driveway, and then you have parking on the street, so they can come in and get their kids. But I have a system in place where, that they text me and say they're on their way. I have the children ready. I have a tablet. Take the tablet to them, let them sign the children out, get their babies, and keep it moving.
And not knowing the property, what do you have exterior to the house itself for the kids to play in the day?
We have a fenced-in backyard.
And I guess you got things back there for them to.
Right.
Because I got grandkids, I know they're a lot
Yeah,
of
they're
energy.
busy and they want to play. Yeah. Yep.
Ma'am, do you, because you're taking care of working people's kids, are you going to be 24/7 open or
No, I'm
Or
just gonna do.
definite hours?
Right. So right now, I want to start out just doing like the day shift. But if the need in the community need me to do the second shift, because I know people have a harder time finding care for second shift, I will do the second shift. So it'll be like first and second, but no overnight. I will not do overnight.
I was going to ask this question perhaps to Mr. Metz, but since you're up here, I wanted to explain this as well. So in this particular case, we would move a residential to a commercial. Would this fall under spot zoning from a zoning perspective?
Possibly. The reason that it didn't go forward as a zone change from R4 to PI It's just that city council does not permit spot zoning. This would be a use variance, which would be changing the use of that property in perpetuity as long as it's still being used as a daycare. Could be by Miss Brown, or if she decides to sell it in 6 months to the next owner and the next owner, as long as it wasn't, as long as it was still used as a daycare for a period of time less than a year. I mean, there could be a gap of more than a year.
Okay. I just wanted to raise that concern with you as we continue to deliberate over the case.
I have one additional thing also to mention. I didn't cover it, but I noticed that there's a few questions on it. So any type of parking and loading requirements that you would typically have for a traditional daycare, that would not be needed or enforced within this, because this is already an existing building. So their daycares have loading zones, they have other requirements such as buffering between neighbors, etc. That would not be needed in this particular case. Or required, I should say.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, ma'am.
Across the street from me, from my house, is a MRDD home where they have staff there, and they, so I think that's his own.
For a group home? Yes.
Right, okay.
Mr. Metz, would you differentiate the current request from the group home that is currently there now? To share what would be different about this particular, potentially moving from a residential to a commercial in this location?
Right, a group home is still residential, and most intents and purposes, it is for people who are living in a particular place, transitioning into a new way of life. A commercial daycare is a daycare that's not considered type A or type B, where it's in-home. So an in-home daycare, which is a permitted home occupation within the city of Middletown. If you live in your house, you can have up to 6 kids as a permitted home. You just have to go through a new use application. Within certain requirements, you can have up to 12 in certain areas, but I don't believe that's permitted within Middletown. A traditional or a commercial child care facility would be a facility such as what Ms. Brown's proposing, which would typically only be permitted within a few different districts, one of them being P&I. It has a much more intensive use than a group home. A group home is several adult individuals living in a house, whereas up to 35 kids is a much more intense use that is not residential in nature, but it is commercial or business oriented.
Any other questions?
I want to understand the impact on the R4 district. If this goes through, how do we isolate the rest of the R4s so they don't use it as a use case that they could use in future requests? Because I don't see the uniqueness that I'd like to see here, and that's a concern. I don't know, maybe the rest of you guys have got any comments on that, because I don't think we should be altering the R4 district definition. So that's where I feel we're at on here. As much as the need is there, I don't, unless you guys can justify somehow the uniqueness of this situation, I have trouble with it.
Any? Yeah. Okay. Any other comments you'd like to share with us this evening about the case?
Well, I just hope and pray that you guys do see the need that's there and come to the conclusion that we are in need of that service there for the kids in that neighborhood. And I've been doing this over 35 years. So I do know what I'm doing. I am passionate about the babies and the need for the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Justice McKnight. I have known Miss Alicia Brown my entire life. I'm a resident, born and raised here in Middletown, Ohio. I'm currently a licensed social worker, and I actually work, I do therapy with children who are in foster care, trying to reunify those families. I am currently working with Job and Family Services, so I work really closely with this population. I just wanted to say a few words on Miss Alicia's behalf. I do think there is a desperate need for safe and affordable daycare for children and families who do not have the means to provide and are worried about their, some of you may be fathers. When you go off to work, you may worry about like how safe your children are, who they're with. And Miss Alicia, like she said, has been doing this for 35 years. And I do think this would be very great for the community of Middletown. In this community, we are raised by a village. So I think this will just add to that motto, and that's all. I just wanted to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cassie Brown. I'm a resident. I've been a resident of Middletown my whole life. I now live in Cincinnati. I also have known Alicia Brown for my whole life. She is, in a word, just an amazing caregiver. Her passion truly is with the youth. In taking care of them, but also progressing them academically. And I truly feel that if given the opportunity to have this daycare in this area would only benefit the Middletown community. And just for, like Justice said, it really does take a village, and she has throughout the years created that for hundreds of kids in this community. So your consideration is greatly appreciated, and her services are definitely needed and vital for this community.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to please come forward. Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing, and we will move to deliberation. Just wanted to make, Jerry, unless you want to go?
No, I'm just looking, as I said there, for the reason, because there's no need, there's no question in my mind it's needed. I feel strapped by trying to isolate it to where it doesn't change the R4 code.
Yes, I just wanted to say to Ms. Brown that as I listen to you speak, that I appreciate the work that you're doing, and you certainly have the expertise and the credentials and the licensure requirements and all those sorts of things. In addition, the folks that you've brought along with you tonight that support you, those are all the correct things. I think the challenge, as we wrestle with this question, is that we're looking at a residential property that would have to then become a commercial property. And particularly when we look at a use variance, that is a significant change in a residential neighborhood. And for that reason, I would not be in support. I agree with Mr. Heidenreich that I think that the location primarily is wrong for serving 35 kids in a residential neighborhood. There's certainly no question that we need additional services for kids and families here in Middletown, but the significance of moving from an R4 to essentially making a code change to accommodate a single home within a residential neighborhood is not good practice. So. Any other comments? I did want to point out, we should look at the hardship criteria once again for a use variance. I wanted to, I'm looking at number D, the essential character of the neighborhood substantially altered as a result of the variance. I would argue that it would be in this particular case to make an accommodation or to change the code to accommodate, the facility itself. So I would be in opposition looking at provision D for the use variance criteria.
And I think subsection A also applies. Implicit in that criteria is that this property be an economically viable operation when in fact it's an R4, which is to be considered a high-density residential and not a financially money-making section of town.
So indeed, is there any other questions before I call for a motion? Yes, ma'am. Do you want to speak? We have closed the public hearing.
That's all right.
Yeah, I would, if you want to make a brief comment, we'll allow that, certainly. Please come to the mic.
So my question is it because of the number of children, or is it because of where the house is located at?
Ma'am, what you're asking this board to do is to actually like spot zone, is to create a zoning area for that house that's different from all of the surrounding area, and it doesn't satisfy a number of the criteria for a use variance that's required by law to be established by clear and convincing evidence. For instance, the property cannot be put to any economically viable use under the permitted uses in the zoning district. This is an R4, this is residential, it's not
Right,
supposed
but
to
it's
be
being-
business.
But the house across the street is doing the same thing.
Well,
Basically, financially is doing the same thing.
I understand, but Mr. Metz, I think, accurately
I understand.
described the distinction between 3 or 4 challenged adults living under the supervision of a state agency. I know it has to be a state agency, versus, because they're not making money on these 4 people living there. They're living there because that is the most suitable place for them to assimilate back into society. Whereas what you're proposing is a money-making, you're not making money, but it's an operation that, as Mr. Metz just pointed out, if you decided a year from now, I think what I want to do with the client list I have, I think I want to sell this, and someone else comes in and now becomes a financially lucrative type of a daycare center, which isn't really anticipated in R4. So
Even though that's not going to happen, but okay, I understand.
Any other comments before we call for a motion? Do we have a motion to deny the application?
Yes, I'll make a motion to deny it.
Do we have a second?
second.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. This is troublesome, but yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that takes us to our next case, 1222. A request by applicant Randall Jones for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 206 Crawford. The property is Zone B2 Commercial Business District. The variance is requested for a lot split that would create 2 lots that would not meet the minimum lot size. Mr. Watson.
Thank you. So tonight before us, we have an area and dimensional variance request by Randall Jones for approval for a lot split that would create 2 lots that would not meet the minimum size. The purpose of the B2 Community Business District is to provide for areas of the city that will contain a wide variety of commercial and office uses to meet the needs of the city and region that require access to major arterial streets and are in close proximity to major residential neighborhoods. As you can see, Mr. Jones owns the lot directly in the middle, parcel number 027 and parcel number 174, bottom left. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 1204.10, Site Development Standards, requires lot sizes to be a minimum of 10,000 square feet within the B2 district. That is illustrated here. As you can see, with the new lot sizes, we would have 3 lot sizes that are under the 10,000 square feet that are needed. So the lot that Mr. Jones would like to split would be this particular lot right here. He would like to split this lot in half, well, 40-60, and then add that lot and consolidate this one to be approximately 8,000 square feet, leave the front half here at 6,000 square feet, and this lot right here is also additionally 6,000 square feet, approximately. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirements for legal notices were sent out. No comments were received. Would you like me to read the review criteria?
Would the board like to review the criteria? No, Mr. Metzen. Okay. Any other?
The applicant is here.
Okay. Any other questions from Mr. Metz before we open the public hearing? Okay. Anyone wishing to speak, I'll open the public hearing now. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
So raise your right hand for me. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Good evening.
I'm Randall Jones, the owner of the properties in question. The corner property I've owned for over 20 years. It's a small commercial building, but as you can tell, it's lot line to lot line building. And Howard Street runs down through there, and there's just no parking. And I'd like to add that back half of the lot in question to the commercial building for parking. I have a couple of car trailers and a snow plow. I run my rental business out of that commercial building. So I need to be able to get in and out of there, and it's congested. The property on Crawford Street on the corner of Howard, virtually going to be the same size as what I'm trying to accomplish in the back there. There's a lot of rear yard left for the one on Crawford that I'd like to split. Any questions for me?
Mr. Jones, I'm just trying to figure this out. Who, Johnny Harris, do you own that lot?
No,
Okay, I didn't. So you own the lot there with the last 3027, and that extends from Crawford back to an alley? The whole thing there, okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And you own, obviously you own the property which is below 206 or 027 last 3.
I'd like to extend my eastern property line across the lot that's got the B2 on it there,
Right.
and have that parcel.
parking
I would add
access.
that parcel to it.
And that parking would then be accessible probably from the alley, because it doesn't look
Yes.
like anybody could go down between your residence and Johnny Harris's residence on your residence being, or on your property.
Right, I'd access that off of the alley there. It runs north off of Howard. I have a little bit, I can get a couple cars there before I hit the property line of that corner building, but it's just not enough to keep me off of Howard. Otherwise, I gotta park in front of the building, park on Howard Street, and it's very narrow there.
And the purpose for joining those two lots is for that
Yes.
parking lot?
Right, yes.
Does this,
Just, I'm not gonna put a parking lot in there, I
you're
just
looking,
need the space.
of course, you're looking for, right now, you're looking for the area variance being less than what's required per lot at 10,000 square feet.
Correct, that's what he's asking, is just approval for me to approve a lot split that would create two parcels less than the 10,000 square feet.
I'm a little still confused, I'm sorry. The 174 lot, is that a building on there, or is it,
That whole thing is a building.
and what, from the edge of the street almost, or is that?
Yes, it goes clear out to Howard, it goes clear to the property line, to the adjacent property, and goes clear to the alley. There's no,
So there's no setback problem on that existing thing because it sits there, I guess. And then there's on the B2, where you got, right under B2, what is that brighter spot?
that bright spot, that's a car trailer.
Oh, okay, so just a park there.
Yeah, I do some car restoration in that building, as well as my rental property, kind of a hub. And so I have a couple of car trailers that I put on that lot there.
Okay, it appears to me that the building that exists there already is on that back property. Is that true? Is that piece that's,
There is a shed roof there that has a trailer under it. It extends, see, I own the whole property. And I 20 years ago or 18 years ago, I got the approval of the planning board to do this. Just didn't proceed to get it recorded.
I was going to ask you that question.
And at my attorney's suggestion,
Okay.
and so now I'm trying to close up the loose ends here and
Okay.
get this done. But so I kind of relied on the planning board's approval 20 years ago and put a fence across there and put a little shed roof on the side of that building. So it'd be wide enough for a trailer.
yeah, so effectively you already did what you're requesting. Okay,
Owned the property.
yeah, I understand, that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I was just going to say that in the record here, it looks like back in 2004, almost identical circumstances where, and it was approved at that time for a lot split for the same reasons. And it sounds like at
I
that.
didn't realize they expired.
Okay.
When I went to my current attorney,
Okay.
and asked him to record it, he says, "Well, you better check with the city."
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the proposed variance, please come forward. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and we'll move to deliberation.
I could ask Mr. Metz,
Yes.
we received no comments by any of the neighbors on this?
We did not. No. The only comment we received was forwarded to you by email, which was for a different application.
Okay.
Okay. So similar circumstances even back in 2004, it looks like, I'm sure everyone's seen that in the record as well. Any other concerns or questions from Mr. Metz, or questions that we need to deliberate on before we call for a motion?
No, I feel like I'm okay with it because his property now, after the split, would be the same size as Johnny Harris.
Yeah.
I mean, it fits the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say review criteria, if we want to cite criteria. I was looking at number 5 for the variance. The hardship criteria, essential character is not altered in making this change, so.
Right.
Do we have a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Dan Ward,
No.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, that moves us to case number 1322. A request by applicant Walter Barano for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at this Long
Commerce
Park-
Drive.
Yeah, Commerce Drive. I'll sustain from the, or not read the full parcel. The property is located in the Business Center Interchange Subdistrict, and the variance requested is for an installation of a 48-foot tall pole sign, where a pole sign is not permitted to be taller than 20 feet and prohibited within the BCI district. Sorry.
So tonight, before us, we have a area and dimensional variance request by applicant Walter Barano for Commerce Drive. This was previously a Waffle House, if you can remember that far back. And it's been torn down, and they're looking to rebuild. This is for the installation of a 48-foot tall pole sign, where pole signs are not permitted within the BCI and are not permitted to be taller than 20 feet based off of the lot front width. Property is zoned BCI, Business Center Interchange Subdistrict. Purpose of the BCI is to accommodate mixed commercial, hospitality, and entertainment uses that serve the overall BC district, the city as a whole, and the region. Create attractive views from I-75 in the BC district, and create a pedestrian scale environment through building and parking lot placement and design. As you see here, the proposed lot is this parcel right here, and then this parcel just to the north of it. So it is slightly larger than the previous Waffle House was. This is the interchange, the on-ramp from 122 onto 75 northbound. There's a hill and then a tree coverage here. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to check out the site, but it is blocked from the highway. The Middletown Development Code, Chapter 122008, permitted signs in non-residential districts. Limit signs to over 10 feet for lots less than 300 feet wide. And then if there was an administrative waiver, it'd be max height of 20 feet. If the pole sign was permitted within the BCI district, here you can go BCI, max size would be 20 feet tall, 150 feet in maximum sign area. Additionally, freestanding signs shall either be a pole sign or a ground-mounted sign. For the purpose of this, a ground-mounted sign would not be feasible to be seen from the highway. A sign that is placed on 2 posts which are no more than 2 feet in height to the base of the sign cabinet is a ground-mounted sign. Table 1220-2 establishes the maximum sign area and sign height allowed for freestanding signs in non-residential zoning districts. That was the table we saw previously. All freestanding signs shall be set back a minimum of 10 feet from all right-of-way and from lot lines, and 50 feet from adjacent lot in a residential zoning district or solely used for residential uses. There are currently no residential uses nearby, nor residential zoning districts. Pole signs must have a minimum height of 10 feet from the ground to the bottom of the sign face. And there would be landscaping that would be a requirement for freestanding signs for new development. Middletown, permanent signs permitted in non-residential districts states maximum height in BCI is to be 20 feet tall. Permanent signs in non-residential zoning districts, pole signs are not permitted. Per the Middletown Development Code, the requirement for legal notice for variance requests were sent out. No public comments were received. The applicant is here, and that ends my staff report.
Thank you.
Question, could you call up the map again? I want to make sure I understand where you're at. Now, is that the corner of the gas station there, right at 122 and Commerce?
Right here, yes, I believe that's the BP.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. You're heading out. This is Atrium Hospital's up here, and then the Renaissance is over here.
And that small triangular shaped type lot is what we're discussing?
Yes, this particular triangular shape, yes.
The other question I've got is, we passed something similar to this for Waffle House off of Dixie Highway.
Correct.
Is that still in existence?
The site, I believe, was sold to another developer. The applicant is here, and he can discuss that a little bit more in detail.
Okay,
Remember.
thank you.
Oh, not bad.
Hightower Oil Products, that's on Commerce Drive, is it not?
Yes, I believe a little bit further north.
And at one point, a variance was requested and granted for a taller sign that they requested, which, I can't remember the height of it. Do you know
Right.
what, do you know
Yeah,
what the height?
I don't know offhand,
Okay.
but yes, I believe there was a A&D variance for that.
And I think that was based on the uniqueness of the terrain, which required some, because it drops off obviously from the ramp on 75 and northbound. It drops off, and there was
And there was,
a need for elevating that sign by variance in order to be seen.
yes, that's correct. And this site does have a hill and very, very tall trees. Additionally, it's similar to a previous, last month's meeting where we did approve a pole sign.
The property that's encircled, the property there that abuts the entrance ramp and the perimeter lines there, who owns that?
That's right here,
Yeah. And the
ODOT.
trees, and the trees.
Yep, all the way up to the trees, all the way up to the edge of their property is ODOT. So they kind of
Yep.
own this whole entire swath of land and then all the way up as well.
There's also a sign there from Atrium Medical Center that's a pretty good sized sign, probably taller than that.
But I think that's way, I think that's east up on the corner of, if the sign you're talking about.
No, I'm talking about the one right on 75.
Is there one on that track?
Yeah, electric one.
Okay, yeah.
But the Hightower sign, as I remember, was
Yeah,
kind
that's a
of
different one.
down in a ditch or in a hole. I drove by this property and it doesn't look to be recessed at all. It looks pretty level to me.
I think on the Hightower thing, actually, when he presented it, we asked him to actually extend it higher than his request, and he came back with if you look at that Hightower sign, there's an extra skinnier piece sticking above, and that was an additional that they did it because of that. They didn't have a high enough one for Marty. I think we approved that then because, and I drive by that thing, and I think we did the right thing on that one. It is a big drop from the highway, Dirk, you said.
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
No, the problem here is the tree line that ODOT has.
You can't go in there and
No.
ODOT's responsible for that.
Right.
But it is level.
Okay. Well, we'll now open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Walter Barano, and I'm with Waffle House Restaurants. And it's pretty self-explanatory to kind of further exhibit what we're more or less up against. Is that tree line blocks anything coming from south from Dayton. But what we've also working with is the tree line is going to block our building location coming off the exit northbound. Not to mention on 122, the tree line over here, which I believe is probably wetlands as well, at least it looks like it is, blocks us coming westbound, and then the Drury Inn blocks us coming eastbound. And so we're just trying to get a little bit taller situation to pull travelers off the interstate, but also to be identified by those going east and west, which is a pretty good size traffic count.
Have you been in touch with ODOT regarding
I've been trying.
trimming these trees? I'm sure that's with all government.
Good luck
it's
with
probably-
that.
Yeah. So you haven't had no success with ODOT maybe clearing out or topping off these this tree line?
Right. The folks of the city were nice enough to give me a couple of contacts over there, and I've made phone calls to them, and just, you know how that goes a little bit.
On the last Waffle House, let me see, have you inquired with, I assume it's ODOT, as to leasing space on the blue boards on the highway that identify eateries?
I think right now they're full.
Yeah.
We will go through that process when and if we haven't closed on the property yet. But once we get closed on the property, then we'll start that process. And I do think that there's a chance that, have to remember, each state's a little bit different. But
The reason I commented, because in that very case, the Waffle House poll application, which is expired now, we were told, and I've not confirmed this, but we were told that once a lessee of a space on one of the blue boards gets that space, as long as they want it, they've got it. Is that your understanding? Because there's no revolving. It doesn't look like there's any kind of a
it changes.
cyclical revolving
Yeah.
of lessees. Once you're on there, I guess you're on there.
And it changes from state to state. Some bump off, some you get priority because, in some states we get priority because we're 24-hour. I don't believe Ohio is one that allows you to bump.
So you haven't checked that yet. It's not relevant to your variance, but I understand.
But those are very
I
helpful to
understand. Absolutely. I know I look at them when I'm
Yeah.
on the highway. I'm not looking for signs necessarily. I'm looking for that collage of establishments.
Only
And
time- go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
The only time I've noticed any business going off on one of those signs is if they go out of business.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
the case. Or don't renew a lease or something, you know?
Yeah.
I give you a little bit of an anecdote. I was doing a similar project in Virginia, and it's a city outside of Roanoke, Virginia. And they changed their sign ordinance because they did a study that they have what we call the logo boards, or the what are they called? Pioneering boards or something, or directional boards. And what they found is more than 50% of people identify the high-rise signs than they do off the logo board signs. And so, you know, people aren't changing their sign codes to make things taller in most places these days, but that's one of the places where it happened to.
Let me ask you another question.
Sure.
I remember when the old Waffle House was there and it was torn down, but what I can't remember is, did it have a pole sign when it was there?
It did. It was an off-site pole sign, and I actually think it shared with the gas station next door.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you may be right.
Can't remember. When you say off-site, a lower sign,
No, it was but closer to the interstate. It was a high-rise sign,
a high-rise sign too?
but close to the interstate. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was a BP station, not the current one, but another one there at that time, I remember. That's right, they were cohabitating
Kinda-
that,
Co-branded.
co-branded.
That was unfortunately before my time, so I don't really
Yeah.
remember. I actually took over this market right after we had to close that restaurant because of the road relocation.
I've got to just make one comment. I think the location you're looking at there is a lot more advantageous for your business than the one that we were talking about a few years ago.
That's right.
Well,
I commend you for that.
we have there are very few things that we've benefited from the coronavirus, but postponing the building of that restaurant may have been one of them. So, we obviously weren't doing any building when that one was slated to be built. And then it went that way for well over a year. And right as we were about to start ramping things up with construction again, this became available to us, and so that worked out nicely, I think.
Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance, please come forward. Seeing none, anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. Okay, we'll now close the public hearing and we'll move to deliberations.
I think we've already done it.
Yeah. Yeah. If we're ready for a vote, do we have a motion?
I'll move that the variance be granted and the review criteria satisfied would be, or applicable would be, I'll find it here in just a second. Unless I'm looking at,
Hardship?
no, the uniqueness of the property.
Oh, yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think that, and I
Yeah.
can't. It's the first one, whether that the conditions and circumstances exist peculiar to the land, and are not applicable generally to other lands or structures in the same zoning district. So
Yeah.
that's what I would find to be my motion will include that as the review criteria.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Dan Ward,
Yes?
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Get my notes together here real quick. This now moves us to case 1422, an applicant by Thomas Fraley for approval of an area and dimensional variance for the property located at 4701 Holly Avenue. The property is zoned R3 attached residential. The variance requested is convert a patio into a sunroom that would reduce the rear yard setback to 29 feet from the required 40 feet.
So tonight we have an A&D variance by applicant Thomas O'Fraley for exactly what you mentioned, a reduction of the rear yard setback from 29 feet from the required 40 feet. The property is zoned R3. The purpose of the R3 zoning district is for medium-density residential or single-family homes in an urban setting, which is completely served by public infrastructure adequate for the applicable density of development. As you can see here, the R3 has site development standards of 13,000 square feet, minimum lot width. One of the more important ones is rear yard setback. It's 40 feet. Just to kind of give you an idea, their house is built on the rear yard setback. It is built approximately 41 feet from the rear yard, which meaning they wouldn't be able to have any structure. According to the site development standards, that would protrude past that rear portion of their house. And as you can see, their patio is roughly 31, maybe 32 feet from the property line. Transforming a patio into a three-sided or four-sided structure with a roof, such as a sunroom, a three-seasons room, a mud room, whatever you want to call it, that would then become an addition to the home and would be considered livable square space, which is why it would have to come here before BZA to be approved for a reduction in the rear yard setback. Ideally, this is probably a good way to explain rear yard setbacks. So this is their neighbor just to the north of them. Their neighbor is also R3, also has a 40-yard setback, but has a much deeper yard. As you can see, 40 feet back, anything within that orange rectangle, they would not be able to build a home. Anything that would be considered livable space. So they could extend the rear of their property all the way up to the orange line and then add a patio into the orange square, but they would not be able to build a livable space within that square. As you noticed, their backyard is not nearly as in-depth, even though it's in the same neighborhood. One additional thing I do want to mention is that building into the rear yard setback is actually a text amendment that has gone through Planning Commission and was approved and has gone through, it's in the early stages with City Council. So City Council is now reviewing a text amendment that would permit you to build within your rear yard setback up to 10 feet. So even with the new text amendment, they'd be about a foot off, which could be granted through an administrative waiver. So if that text amendment does go through, and I'm not going to pretend I know whether it would or would not, but if it was to be approved and they applied in 3 months or 4 months, whenever it was, I could give them an administrative waiver and they would still be able to build the remainder of their structure. Legal notices for this variance was sent out to all property owners contiguous and directly across the street. No comments were received. And once again, this is an area and dimensional variance.
So it appears the most affected property was that adjacent property that you showed us, because the Fraley's backyard is completely adjacent to their side yard.
Correct, yes.
And of course, I used to live on a corner lot, and a corner lot creates those problems because you're wider than you are deep versus the other people who are deeper than wide.
Yes, and that is the issue within that neighborhood. All the corner lots are kind of like that.
If there's no other questions, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. We'll swear you in.
Yeah, if you would like to. Yeah, you're after them.
Can I swear both of them at the same time?
I don't see why not.
Yeah. If you two would raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
I'm Thomas Fraley. I live at 4701 Holly Avenue. And we've lived there 50 years. And we have a patio behind our house. It's a 12 by 12 concrete slab, and it's covered. And we wanted to get some more use out of it. We'd like to sit on the patio, and we were thinking of enclosing it to with some kind of screening or something to keep away the mosquitoes. And so we contacted Champion, and they suggested the sunroom, which has screened windows, and it's a little more elaborate than just screening. And our patio is 12 by 12, but the sunroom would be 13 feet by 14 feet, so it'd be 1 foot longer than the current structure. And the current structure has an aluminum roof. This would have a more solid roof. And we talked to our neighbors, and no one has objected to it. So I guess that's about all I have. We've been there 50 years. The house was built in 61. It was the second house built in that area. The one that you can see behind it, that was the first house built.
Okay.
Couple questions for you.
Sure.
This sunroom is, what sort of foundation does it have? Is it a permanent type foundation with a footer and stuff, or is it sit on a concrete slab?
They're going to put something in.
Cement
It's it'll be elevated so that it will be at the same level as the floor of the house, as the patio door coming out. And I'm not sure.
You might look into that to make sure you got a footer under there, because if it becomes part of your structure, that could vary a little bit, and And of course, that would alter the roof line and everything on that. So just find that out, I would suggest.
Okay.
And also, do you plan to heat this?
It has some kind of heating.
Okay, so it would be 12 months possible usage.
They call it a three season.
Three-season?
3 season, okay.
Yeah. So it's gonna have windows as well as screens.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, turned out to be a little bigger than just a screening.
Hopefully you enjoy it.
They always do.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed variance? And anyone wishing to speak in opposition? So we'll close the public hearing. Move to deliberation.
Well, I don't have any problem with it, since the neighbors are all in agreement, and it sounds like council may amend the rules to be just within 1 foot of what it needs to be anyway. So,
And it's clear that it's not going to change the character of the neighborhood.
no.
And if you want to secondarily consider the uniqueness of a corner lot, which does lessen the backyard, I mean, I guess you could stretch to say that that is a review criteria that would be satisfied. So I'd move that it, subject to those 2 review criteria, that the variance be granted.
Second. Second. Okay, second by Dan. Yep.
Okay.
David Cash,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
Dan Ward,
Yes,
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Gary Gross.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Enjoy the room. Sounds very nice. Okay, that moves us to the last case of the evening, 1522. A request by applicant Wendy Kissel for approval of a use variance for the property located at 2237 Highland Street. Property is zoned B2 Commercial Business District. The variance requested is utilize the property as a single-family home where the City of Middletown's Development Code prohibits single-family homes in the B2 district.
So tonight before us, case number 15 is a use variance by applicant Wendy Kissel, who was present. Property is zoned B2, and which would prohibit single-family homes within that particular district. The purpose of the B2 Community Business District is to provide for areas of the city that will contain a wide variety of commercial and office uses to meet the needs of the city and region that require access to major arterial streets and are in close proximity to major residential neighborhoods. This area is quite unique. There's a variety of different zoning districts. I mean, as you see, there's R4, which is high-density residential. That's butted up right against AK, which is industrial, heavy, very, very heavy use. Below it is B3. Still, a lot of those are legal non-conforming, heavy uses. And this B2 area, when it was initially constructed, was built as residential. And then at some point in time, there was rezoning, which happens every few years with our comprehensive plans, and it was changed to B2. So just go back real quick. So just a quick explanation of a legal non-conforming status, of what that particularly means. So as this was originally built as single-family homes, it was permitted, it was zoned residential. At that point in time, the property then changed from being residential to a commercial business. It was successful commercial business for several years. I don't know the exact distance, but but it was for several years. And then during that time that it was a business, the zoning district changed to B2, which was fine. There was no issues with that. But then the applicant would like to change it from a commercial business or commercial property in a commercially or a business designated zoning district back to residential. There's no legal non-conforming status because it is currently viewed as a business within a business district, even though it was initially constructed as residential, as a residential building. So that's why we're here. Whenever a non-conforming use has been changed to a conforming use, such use shall no longer be defined as non-conforming, nor shall the property be returned to the former non-conforming use. Here you can see single-family homes within the B2 is XX, which is prohibited, which is why we're here for a use variance to return it back to its former state. Per the Middletown Development Code, all legal notices were sent out and published. There were no comments. This is a use variance. So in order to grant a use variance, the BZA shall determine that strict compliance with the terms of this code will result in unnecessary hardship to the applicant. The applicant must demonstrate such hardship by clear and convincing evidence that all the following criteria are satisfied. The applicant is here, and that ends my staff report.
Okay. All right. Any questions from Mr. Metz before we move to opening the hearing?
When was that structure built on that particular lot? Do you have any history of that?
I don't, but the applicant is here, and I believe that she would be able to give a little bit further detail.
I'll now open the public hearing.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Come on up.
Finally.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Kissel, and he explained it pretty well. The property is very unique. There was a house on it. I lived on it from 1991. It was one house and a small garage. And then it was also ProCare carpet cleaning, which was my business for over 30 years. And I moved out in 1994. Well, it was just one lot. Well, through the years, there was 2 vacant lots, and apparently they were the most vacant lots in Butler County. And I worked for years to get those 2 lots. So finally got them and wanted to build the building that you see on the left side for vehicles. And so at that time, in order to get the approval to build it, the city wanted it turned to commercial property. So that's when the change happened. And from that time up until about a year ago, that was occupied by a business, the people that bought my business. Well, that didn't work out. So I tried to sell it, and no appraiser would give an appraisal on it because it looked like a house. And they says, this is not a business, this is a house. And so I couldn't sell it, and the people that wanted to buy it couldn't get a loan for it because they couldn't get an appraisal. So I decided to rent it to them and then get the variance so they could get an appraisal so they could get a loan on it down the road. And that's what I did. So that's why I'm wanting it turned back to residential so I can sell it eventually and they can live happily ever after. And the signs on the building and on the other building, they are covered now. There's no sign out front, nothing. So the people that are renting it are using it. They had, I think, 5 or 6 storage units in town, and they're car collectors. So there's one lady, it's like almost like a family. There's one lady who lives in the house, and then the other ones have there are cars in them. And the back building, if you can see, they're making that a wood shop for their father who's aging, and they wanted to keep him kind of close by, but he doesn't live there. He'll just be there tinkering back in that building. So that's about all the information I can give you, and I hope that you can see your way to give me that variance so I can live happily ever after.
And the house is directly to the right, is that?
Yes, and that's Scott Prophet's house, And that's privately lived in. And then on the other side, it's a private home. And behind is two private homes. And across the street that Halsey owns, those are two rental houses. So I would imagine that the neighbors will be very glad to see it turn back to residential. Not that it was noisy there or anything, but, trucks pulling out and that.
Yeah, I think they had a carpet business in there.
Yes,
They-
Procare Carpet Cleaning, that was mine.
Yeah, probably talked to you once, but that's okay.
Yeah, probably.
Any case, so that three-car garage that's extending close or towards the house on the, what is that, the north side there?
Yes, that's placed there because that was where the city wanted that building. We were going to place it closer into where the house was, but the city said it had to be where it was.
Okay. And the original garage, that's where your driveway looks like it's coming in, that's the one-car garage back there?
Yes, there's a one-car garage, and then there's a building, there was an extension put on that connected the building in the back, and that building in the back was built in, I think, 92. There was also a metal building in the back that was there, but that's no longer there.
So effectively, are we proposing here that you turn that huge gravel area into a lawn at some point?
Well, yes, and that's a turnaround spot for a lot of people right there because it's on the bend. And I never had it blacktop. Everything else was blacktop, but I didn't have it blacktop because you could hear when people were pulling in up there. It was, and I explained that to the city, and they said that was fine, and that was several years ago.
Okay, I guess the sewer that's shown there is part of the road right-of-way?
Yes, and that was just put in 2018 or 19, after I had left, because there was such a water issue, and that was, I didn't really go and press for that, but I kept saying that there would be a lot of accidents there because that builds up with water. So they finally came out and did that. I also, in the back of the property, I have a drain that I had put in several years back, so there wouldn't be any water problems out there.
And converting this back to a residential property, is the inside of the home largely still residential, or?
Yes.
Significant-
Oh, no, it's going to be residential.
Okay.
Yes, and then hopefully they're going to buy it. But we have to get this step because otherwise they can't qualify for a loan because no one will give an appraisal on it because they said it's very confusing.
Well, okay, I've got to ask this question. When you sell the property, does this, and maybe it's to us or to the city, that's an unusual looking condition for a residential lot. Would that be in conformance with the neighborhood, the way it looks, if she just sold it to somebody and he just left it like that? I don't know who I'm asking, but
I don't know, but it's kept getting built on. And so that's why that property is so unique, and I had a difficult time trying to sell it. We tried to sell it commercial, and we ran into the same kind of issue that no one wanted to give them a commercial loan on it because they says it's more residential because of the houses around it. So it just became a mess.
I have to speak up. I didn't know it's been 30 years, but I'm the culprit that helped them through all of this. And that particular corner in that house, it was really rough. And the new owner, this lady, they have really, I mean, that house is unbelievably nice inside. They put a lot of time and money into it, but that whole corner was really kind of pretty far downhill. And I was able to help them with buying that home, and it's been an enhancement for Mayfield, actually, because that corner was really rough. Anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Well, back to my concern is that, and I'm gonna be in favor of this, it's just that it just doesn't look residential.
I know, it doesn't.
And I would encourage.
But it
whoever
is.
Yeah, I would encourage whoever you say to
It's just got a whole lot of garages, which you don't usually find. I think there's 9 garages in there, and it just took a very unique people that wanted it for private use.
Yeah.
And I found them, except they can't buy it because of the zoning issue, I guess.
Okay, I'm satisfied.
Any other questions?
No?
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. I do have a question for Mr. Metz, though. Maybe I'm just not understanding this. Why are we having a variance here when we could just add it back to the R4 district because it's contiguous?
So let's go forward. You could go through a zone change, but that would be spot zoning, which our city council does not like to do, nor does really any of the city staff.
It's not really spot zoning, is it? Because it'd be part of the R4 right above it.
Can I say something? Can I get back into
Sure.
the mix here?
Sure.
Why not?
That's the two houses across the street that are B2 are private homes. And behind it, those are 2 private homes. And then Spot Profits on the corner is a private home, yet it's zoned B2. Now, I own the property on the corner of Jefferson and Carolina, and that, of course, should stay commercial because it is commercial. Thank you.
Well, and
So-
also, if I could add too, the one across the street from the Profit property is also a business there. They do welding and whatever else in there.
Yeah.
So there are some applicable B2 situations there.
So spot zoning is anything where you pick only one particular parcel or one particular lot and then you change that. Traditionally, if we're going to change the zoning of something, it's going to be multiple parcels, an area, something larger. So if we just change the zoning of one particular property, which we could potentially do that, I mean, that is also an option. I'm not saying no, but a use variance would be a little bit more applicable. It was zoned B2 for a particular reason. Whoever changed the zoning had a particular interest for having this be B2. As I previously mentioned, this is quite a tricky use variance.
Sure.
We have residential to the north, which is properly zoned. We have legal non-conforming homes, which are single-family homes on Carolina and on Highland and Jefferson that have a legal non-conforming status, which means they're single-family homes. It was rezoned, and it'll remain single-family homes and still be perfectly legal until they vacate their home for a period of time greater than a year, or they're torn down intentionally. A use variance would be a little bit more applicable in this case than changing the zone of one particular.
That's why I asked, because I always understood spot zoning was trying to zone something that didn't connect to another part of that same zone.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yep, that's also part of it as well.
Okay.
Well, sounds like we're ready to move on this one, so do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve this.
Mr. Gash, did you want to add any hardship criteria or anything?
Well, all of the use review criteria have to be satisfied, and it does appear that the review criteria has been satisfied.
Well, I'd like to add a comment that I believe that house was built as a single-family home originally. So I feel there is some grandfather situation that, at least in my mind, fits this situation.
Well, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Yes?
Gary Gross,
Yes.
Todd Moore,
Yes.
Dan Ward,
Yes.
Jerry Heidenreich,
Yes.
David Cash.
Yes.
Motion granted. Thank you, Ms. Kissel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
New
That
and old
moves us to new old business. Mr. Metz, did you?
Yep, so the new business is, at our last meeting, we had a conversation about this city does not provide staff recommendations. And then it was relayed to me that at a previous training session, our current attorney or law director, I should say, confirmed with you during that training session that the city staff would provide our thoughts on the review criteria. And when you mentioned it to me last meeting, I went back, I listened to the audio, I did confirm that, and then I did speak with them recently just to confirm that and which way would be the best, whether it's through the staff report or through the current PowerPoint that we have. We determined that it'd be best for me to provide that information with you beforehand on the staff reports. So moving on from here on out, and that is something I need to speak to the Assistant Development Services Director and Ashley and Deborah about how we want to do it. Am I going to write in paragraph form? Am I just going to highlight it green or highlight it red if it's conflicting, green if it's in conjunction with, whichever way we would feel that it's the easiest related to you with the most minimal amount of opinion added. Because
I'd like to make a comment to that.
Yep.
I'm concerned that it'll bias some people by what the city says. And that has always bothered me in the past when we used to present the city recommendation prior to voting. So I would ask you discuss that with your legal people and see if that isn't considered biasing the committee.
I know on Planning Commission, when I was on, what we would do is, we didn't know what the recommendation was gonna be until we got through the public hearings, and then we'd ask staff recommendation, and then she'd put it up on the screen.
Correct.
Telling us what the recommendation of the city was. That way, at least you can listen with an open mind all the way through it until you get to that point.
That's historically how we did it
Yeah.
here as well.
Okay, yeah.
But that still is before the vote, and it could be contrived somewhere that it was influencing our voting. That's the concern
Yeah,
I got.
I think so.
James, so you've conferred with the law director regarding staff recommendations or staff, I'll use the word recommendation. I don't know if it's recommendation or if it's just a review, comments or whatever it might be. Did the law department indicate that that should be a mandatory section of the variance procedure for each applicant? Or is it a discretionary at the, does the Board of Zoning Appeals have the discretion to request that it not be given? I mean, what's the mandatory nature or discretionary
Good
nature
question.
of the review?
That's an excellent question. Going back and listening to the audio tapes, and then when I did confirm it, when I said I confirmed it, I mean with our department directors, not with necessarily with the law director. But when I listened to the audio tapes, it was because there was a transition, I believe, from last year to this year. As I started in middle of January, my first BZA meeting wasn't until February. So there was a transition from where city staff provided a recommendation right before a vote, similar to Planning Commission, and then since there was since our current law director preferred that we did not provide that, there was at a training of some sort, a special training session, that was brought up, and then there was a discussion of whether or not we could provide that, but via the review criteria. Since going back and listening to the audio tapes, I didn't confirm whether it would be something whether you would like or not. I mean, I can always ask to see if we could have a conversation or how best you guys would like it. I mean, I can always go back and get Law's opinion.
So you recall from at that meeting, you're talking about the meeting we had with Ben Yoder?
Correct. I think that was in like February or March.
So what you're saying is that staff recommendation, again, for want of a better term, will simply be addressing the review criteria and the application as whether the review criteria satisfy, or whether the conditions of the variance or the property satisfy certain review criteria, and nothing other than that.
Correct. It would be whether confirming this review criteria
Yeah.
is met or is not met. With an A and D, it only needs to meet one of them. With a use variance, it needs to meet all of them. And then we also have appeals as well, which you guys,
So your position would not be saying prior to a vote, the staff, after consultation or after conference, believes that the variance should be granted or not. It's simply going to the review criteria, for instance, on a uniqueness of property. Staff believes there is a uniqueness of property, and whatever other criteria might be applicable to the variance.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's
That's fair.
I think that's
Yeah,
beneficial.
That would be helpful.
We don't have to agree with that.
Yeah.
No.
yeah.
But that could be their
There's no subjectivity. It's whether objectively the criteria is satisfied or not.
Yes, and that's correct. And that's why I was kind of mentioning I need to speak to our department directors, Ashley and Deborah, on what is the most clear and concise way that I can explain whether we agree with you or not agree with you, what our recommendations based off the criteria, whether they are satisfied or not, in the most concise way possible without adding anything extra.
Exactly.
That's why I was mentioning color coding it or something else like that.
Previously, we would get a definite, well, the city recommends this, or the city doesn't. And now you're modifying to soften it, which is good, so we still got the discretionary part.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether I guess the question is, does the board have any prerogative to say yay or nay to the staff making those or determining whether criteria has been satisfied or not? Because I kind of got lost there, because we're an extension of the Planning Commission, I'm assuming.
Correct.
And so Planning Commission has certain governmental prerogatives, and I'm assuming that the Planning Commission, I don't know whether we as a board could say we don't want it, or whether the Planning Commission says you're going to get it.
Well, that would be totally up to you, whether and how you want it. Would you want it through the PowerPoint, or would you want it through a staff report? My interpretation or my thought process on putting it in the staff report is that is directly just the city kind of outlining it, most minimal amount of conversation added. Whereas if we put it up on the screen and I said I have to try to be unbiased, but then I have to look at the applicant and say, you don't meet these criteria.
Yeah, I think staff report would be better.
Yeah.
Does this require a motion by the board?
Well, this is just to determine whether, this is just me explaining that moving forward, we are going to do that because the previous meeting you asked about it, and I don't know which one it was. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes. One of you mentioned it, and I said I didn't know anything about that, but I'd have to go back and review the audio. And now I'm just telling you, you guys were correct. This is the way we were thinking about moving forward, and if you're okay with that, we don't need a vote, but if you're okay with that, next meeting, your staff packets will have the review criteria outlined.
Personally, I would find it of use.
Now, when you say review criteria, are you saying that, those are the conditions that have to be met, whether it's for a use variance or a practical difficulty, those sorts of things. Is that correct? Or are you actually talking about looking at something in the code and saying, here are two subsections that you believe are not met? Is that?
This would just be the review criteria that we put up on the screen every time, which
Right.
is the A and D or the use variance. And particularly like with the A and D, since it only needs to meet one, I could just go down, and once it finally meets one of the review criteria, I could highlight it green and move on to the next. Or the use variance, I would have to go through each one because it has to meet all of them. But that's all that would state.
Just yay or nay without any further explanation as to why it doesn't satisfy that criteria.
Correct. And then at any point in time, if you guys had any questions as to why that is not met, in particular, we had a case tonight where there's an argument, a civil discussion of whether or not childcare is commercial or high-intensity use. And it's just kind of like I would have to re-explain why that is. And we could do that with any type of the review criteria. I could explain why it was the way it was.
I think this is just a comment. Mr. Cash asked about the, early on I'd ask about the change. Was there a statutory, was there administrative, was there anything that happened at the state level or anything like that? What facilitated this change of pace? Because it came about in a way, at the time, it was kind of in the context of Hollywood land, so I think it put a lot of folks on guards, and it was just kind of odd timing there and how that happened. But when I'm not familiar of any, I'm not a land use lawyer by any means, but I'm just saying I'm not familiar with any type of requirement other than the Duncan standards, essentially, which is what we're reviewing here. That would we talk about a preference of a city attorney. That's different than saying that there's actually a criteria that has to be met somewhere. I'm not familiar with anything that would have been done, state, administrative, or anything else that would facilitate that type of change. That's one of the things that always kind of confused me about it. Is it just the preference? Are there case law that you can point to that would say, there's been challenges that would bias a BZA in that way? I'm not familiar with any of those cases at all. So when we're talking about preferences, that's different than clearly what we're talking about in terms of a legal change. So that's always been confusing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we go that route and what facilitated that change? Absent some other change, is it just a change in process? But it sounds like we can.
I think at one point in time, there was the question that Jerry just raised, was the recommendation, which was a little more than just saying this use criteria has been satisfied. Planning department believes this use criteria has been, this has not been, this has been. There was a little more subjectivity in the recommendation process, which then I think probably lent to a perceived bias in the,
Yeah.
and could affect the voting.
If somebody ever wanted to challenge our.
And I think we decided that we didn't want those.
Yeah.
At some point in time, I think it was decided by the constitution of the board at that time
Yeah.
that we not receive recommendations.
And from what I've been told, exactly what Mr. Cash just said is what has been conveyed to me as well. It's taking away a little bit of liability and a little bit of city bias.
Yeah.
This is the benefit of this board is that people are being judged by their peers.
But from the perspective of what you've just described to be the review process now, it doesn't appear because we may be somewhat confused on whether or not a criteria has been satisfied or not. Planning department has a little more experience and it shouldn't form our opinion, but it at least may guide us into asking questions. Okay, now I understand. Can you tell me why planning department believes this criteria has been satisfied?
And something can always come up here during the discussions by the people representing your case that could change what you guys thought at the time that you even put anything in there. So unless it's
fair enough.
Yeah,
I'm fine with this.
I think it would be beneficial to the board.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Thank you very much.
Motion for adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed.
Huh?
We got to clean up his work from years ago.
I know, it looks like. All right, thanks, James.
Great night. A long night.
It was a real long night.
Go get a supper or something so you don't pass out on this.
Oh, that's why I eat that chocolate bar. I need supplements. Glucose, yeah.
You know, there is a need for what those ladies were trying to do.
Absolutely, yeah.
What can we do? I'm gonna talk to the city planning chairman there. You're still chairman, right? I mean, what those ladies were asking for, there's a desperate need in this town.
Absolutely.
I know, I had our children that I
agree.
had to do, I got to happen, I found a family, they were more on the grandfather side than they were anything else, but there's the desperate need for that.